we could just start with some announcements too, and then as people join, I can let them in while you're talking.
Yeah, we will go ahead and get started. Just want to start by saying thank you to everyone for joining us tonight, and thank you to our presenters. Before we get into our presentation, we have a few announcements. The first one is this presentation is worth HSW credit, and so Laura is going to paste a link into the chat that will take you to a Google Docs, and if you fill that out, we will make sure you get your credit. The second announcement is I want to announce our October program. That program is a firm sustainability roundtable, and we will have 3 presenters from different firms to talk about how their firms establish their sustainability programs and kind of provide a guide for that, but it'll be just very interactive, and we hope that you can all make it to that. And so Laura's also going to paste a link to that event on the BSA website in the chat. And then I wanted to mention that for our December program, we are looking to do a program over sustainability softwares. And I think this is driven by the fact that, you know, there are a lot of young professionals who are impacting their firm's sustainability by using these software programs, and specifically young people can come in and say, oh, here's a program, and 2 hours later I've mastered it. And so we're looking for like those people, those young emerging professionals, to do brief presentations over the software they're championing. So if you know anyone in your firm or in a different firm who you think would be interested in presenting in December, please reach out to us, or if you have questions or want more information about that, don't hesitate to email us. And again, Laura's going to paste our emails into the chat. And then the last announcement is just that tonight's program is part of the Climate Connection series, which Committee on the Environment is doing with Committee on Resilient Environments in honor of Climate Month. And the next one in the series is October 6th. If you're interested in joining that, the link for that will shockingly be in the chat. Okay, so without further ado, tonight we have 4 presenters that will be presenting over the MIT Nano building. Samir Shriji is a design principal at HGA and an advocate for creating sustainable environments that foster community. Arlen Lee is a senior architect and science planner at HGA. She's also a Fitwel ambassador and has worked on cutting edge academic and research facility projects throughout the country. And she's active in the USGBC, NESI, and the International Institute for Sustainable Laboratories. Marcel Graff is a senior project coordinator and sustainability lead at HGA. He specializes in design and construction of sustainable and resilient research labs and educational buildings. He was an early adopter and champion for sustainable design, as a sustainable design leader, he oversees HGA Boston's sustainability team. And finally, Jacob Knowles leads the BR+A sustainability initiatives. He has championed millions of square feet of zero net energy buildings and carbon neutral campuses, leading to numerous grants and awards, including the AIA COTE Top 10. And he is currently a BSA board member. So with that, I will turn it over to our presenters.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you, Laura, for hosting us, and thank you, everybody, for joining this. We're very proud that our project was honored as a COTE Top 10 award recipient. It's very gratifying. You know, we put a lot of work, and you'll see kind of the efforts, and we'll get into some details of what was done on the project. And we thought a good way to introduce you to the project is we recently put a video together that kind of gives an overview of what's in the building, how it was designed, some thoughts about how it integrates onto the campus, and of course, very relevantly here, all of the measures that we took to kind of make it environmentally responsible, and meet a lot of the kind of the goals that MIT set for us and we set for ourselves. So I would ask Remington, who's on here, to share a video, and I'll mute while that happens.
MIT Nano is one of the largest investment in research in MIT's history. It is a shared core facility that is dedicated to the research at the nanoscale. The research within aims to address some of humanity's greatest challenges, from sustainable energy to quantum computing, clean water to finding a cure for cancer. Programmatically, it is primarily housing 2 levels of clean room and an imaging suite in the basement, prototyping space on the top floor with chemistry teaching. Researchers working at the nanoscale fabricate microelectronics on a wafer that then they need to take to an electron microscope to be able to see what they're doing at that scale. So those 2 programs are always coupled. Both have very tight requirements for vibration, EMI, and acoustics, and both have very tight requirements for humidity and temperature control. The site MIT chose for the MIT Nano is at the heart of the campus, and the reason for that is really to have the quietest spot away from trains and roads surrounding the campus. The other reason, which is more important, is the fact that academically having such a shared core facility at the heart of the campus puts it just where you want it for the faculty in the adjacent departments.
Located in the shadow of MIT's Great Dome and parallel to the Infinite Corridor and Main Group, this site offered a unique opportunity for both academic and physical connections. MIT Nano transforms this precinct from a service yard and brownfield site into a series of outdoor connected rooms. This allows the campus to flow around and through the building, ensuring a more open and accessible shared resource for the entire campus. The dialogue with the landscape and the building provide the necessary foundation for Improbability Walk to the south, as well as a pedestrian-friendly street connecting Mass Ave and North Court on the north. The building party is a simple stone box that's shrouded in a glassy veil. The stone box articulation picks up on the historic main group's building's stone facade and gravity, while its glass facade creates a continuous visual dialogue between old and new. The glazed wrapper is strategically carved away view corridors to bring natural light deep into the laboratories, providing views from all the spaces and enhancing the well-being and safety of the users. Our goal was to integrate the high-performance functions into a cohesive, legible form that is in harmony with its iconic surroundings. MIT Nano celebrates the sophisticated systems that serve it by placing them poetically on display.
MIT's leadership commitment to building a very high-performing technical building for nano fabrication was always coupled with achieving best-in-class sustainability goals. So the design team had 3 goals in mind in terms of that achievement. The first is the well-being and safety of the users while providing for collaboration space for them. The second was creating a building that is resilient and adaptable over time, because the science changes fast and the building needs to adapt. The third was a lot of our focus is the reduction of energy use and creating a most efficient clean room ever. You'll hear more about that.
Nanoscale research facilities use dramatically more energy than any other building type. Maintaining a particle-free clean room environment requires air filtration, temperature stability, humidity control, and extraordinary ventilation, up to 290 air changes per hour. So MIT challenged the team to build the highest performing academic clean room in the country. We didn't end up there, we started there. To achieve this, the team benchmarked academic clean rooms nationally. MIT Nano achieves best-in-class performance by incorporating over 60 ECMs with 6 high-impact strategies, uncommon in cleanroom facilities. So overall, MIT Nano achieves a 51% energy cost savings and a 50% greenhouse gas emissions reduction compared to the lead ASHRAE 90.1 2007 baseline. The highest priority for any research environment is to comply with the best practices for health and safety. Safety of all users, especially within the hazardous environment of a clean room, is ensured through a gas monitoring system and increased visibility, with windows surrounding the clean room also bringing daylight deep into the lab while providing views to the landscape. Beyond avoiding harm, MIT Nano has been designed to foster occupant well-being from multiple perspectives, including thermal, visual, oral, physical, and psychological. A particular note is the investment in a high-performance curtain wall system and perimeter heating to reduce occupant discomfort in the perimeter offices and conference rooms. From the inside, researchers experience more sunshine and more of the world they are working to benefit. Psychological well-being is addressed through the support of social interaction, such as video conference systems to allow researchers to communicate with people outside of the cleanroom space, as well as glass partitions to allow a view into and out of certain research spaces. And even within the tight site constraints, connection to the outdoors is supported through access to and views into the courtyard. A significant thing we learned at MIT Nano is the difference between the measured and the predicted energy use intensity, or EUI. And this demonstrates the design's ability to effectively throttle down to adapt to lower loads generated by the researchers' current activities and tools as the building continues to be fit out. Designed to meet the diverse needs of advanced scientific research, MIT Nano has the ability to operate efficiently across a wide range of conditions. While the predicted data from energy modeling shows higher energy consumption, it is just one such operating scenario the building is anticipated to see.
A really exciting part of the project that connects it to the larger community is the incorporation of the art installation by the environmental artist Olafur Eliasson called Northwest Passage, which is his commentary on global warming effect on the ice cap. This really made the project a fully integrated project, technically, sustainably, and artistically.
Okay. So you can see that some of us might be considering other careers in acting and presenting, but you'll hear the less formal side of us here, and as we walk through some of the kind of ideas a bit in more detail, we want to make it as meaningful as possible.
Before you start, just to say, I don't think we said in the beginning, we are recording this, and I think we should have announced it, that we were recording, so sorry to break in, but and then we will have time for questions at the end as well, so just.
That's great. So we got this brilliant idea of organizing our talk and 10 topics, so our agenda follows the framework, but we actually kind of were so kind of impressed with the way the COTE top 10 framework sets up a great kind of structure for how we think about buildings. We've kind of been doing that, and I wanted to hand it over to Arlen, who can talk to how HDA approaches sustainability and how the framework comes in handy, and it became. Go ahead, Arlen. Just.
Thanks, Samir. So those of you that are not familiar with the framework, it is basically a framework developed by the AIA. It came out of the COTE Top 10. It was originally kind of a toolkit and then developed into a framework. It has 10 categories in it. And the purpose of it is to really expand the notion of what sustainability is, to be a much more holistic perspective on buildings. In fact, if you look through the framework and all the terminology, you will not find the word sustainability. Purposely so. It's really meant to be a design mindset that embraces a lot of the aspects of design that you see here. So the reason for adopting the framework first of all AIA awards now require that projects be described in terms of this. So it already is a system that is adopted in that sense. For many years, we had been designing, these strategies. We've been using these strategies that align with the categories that you see here. But when we started to tell the story of MIT through the framework, it was not originally set up that way. MIT was designed before and built before the framework was officially adopted. So the Nano building did not have that particular lens. But as we started to craft our story through that lens, it really helped us to make our story much more cohesive and holistic. And so as a result of that and other projects looking in a similar fashion, HGA has now adopted the framework as really the basis on which we guide all of our future projects. And just, one thing, you'll see a lot of specialized strategies through this building. This is a very highly specialized type of building. But in a similar way that humans all share 99.9% of DNA, and the differences are in the 0.1%, buildings may not share that much, but they do share a lot of common DNA. And the AIA framework does serve as a common platform across the building types to really be able to bring out their holistic stories as well. So we'll talk about the 10 categories now.
All right. So in terms of an integrated approach to the design of the building, I will start with kind of the context. In the next image, you'll see that from day one, the task that is illustrated by the sketch on the left side is how this new building is right at the heart of the campus, right next to the Great Dome at MIT, but really it was back of house, a service yard, and the building anticipated a change that is going to transform the whole precinct. MIT decided to, on the side ahead of us joining, basically because, as you heard in the video, it wants to be near where the users are. So it is kind of connected to adjacent buildings, and it's meant to serve. And as you also heard, it's a shared core facility. So it houses a lot of, there's no like offices for faculty within the building. It is purely a shared facility. So as you can see in this illustration, which is MIT graphic for this, it was meant to connect to all of the other departments adjacent that are users of these kind of tools within a Nano building. So they placed it there primarily to achieve quiet. Nanotechnology needs just quiet in terms of vibration, electromagnetic interference, acoustics, and you want to be away from roads. So this is in the heart of the campus, but away from Mass Ave and Vassar, and away from a train track that runs to the north, which impacts what happens within the building. So the reason it's there is practical in terms of kind of achieving high performance, but is very academic, as you see in this diagram. So our design really tried to weave the building into the network that exists on campus. If you know MIT, you've probably heard of the infinite corridor. So MIT Nano creates this new outdoor space that parallels the infinite corridor, which they called Improbability Walk. You see that image on the bottom left of that space, a new beautifully landscaped space between the main group, what they call the old buildings, and the new facade of MIT Nano. And to the north of our building, transforming what used to be kind of a place for dumpsters and service vehicles into a pedestrian-friendly and bicycle-friendly thoroughfare, basically between Mass Ave on the west to the North Court on the east. And linking both is the space that you heard about. It's called the breezeway. And in the breezeway, which is on the northwest side of our site, Olafur Eliasson, who's a very famous environmental artist from Iceland, did this project, which was commissioned by the LIST, which is MIT's Art Institute. And they have this percent for the art program. And we opted to have the artwork be integrated into the architecture. And we love the fact that he had this piece that commented on the melting ice cap on the Northwest Passage, which is kind of now a link by sea as a result of global warming. So it's a kind of a great statement. So that made the project have more layers of meaning besides its functionality and the transformation on campus. And leadership at MIT gave us the mission to achieve best-in-class sustainability, not just on energy, and you'll hear the details, but they wanted this because it is part of MIT's social mission. So they're really engaged academics, facilities, and all parts of the campus to kind of lead and help establish what the goals are, including there's was a newly appointed director of a sustainability program, Julie Newman at MIT, who participated in us establishing what the goals for the buildings were. And so we had to really push the envelope on many fronts.
Thank you, Samir. I'm going to touch on equitable communities. So as a shared core facility, MIT Nano serves the entire MIT community of faculty, researchers, students, and the neighboring institutions. And the research within aims to address some of humanity's greatest challenges, from sustainable energy to clean water to finding a cure for cancer. So the building is meant to serve several generations of investigators in a rapidly changing scientific field. And to ensure the provision for potential future faculty and student needs, the design process expanded beyond the usual stakeholders to include a group of surrogate users who spoke to future scientific trajectories. So we had numerous workshops, town hall meetings, and something that we call tool talks, kind of maybe a little unique to MIT. The whole community actively participated in shaping the building program, the sustainability goals, and physical planning. So designed to maximize collaboration, meeting spaces and informal gathering moments are strategically located on every level of the project, including open stairs connecting people vertically, while links to adjacent buildings occur on every floor. The new outdoor campus spaces, the North Corridor and the Improbability Walk, shown here, transform the precinct into an inviting, pedestrian, universally accessible, and bicycle-friendly neighborhood, while giving glimpses of the research within MIT Nano. And very significant to the Improbability Walk, it's named after the late Professor Millie Dresselhaus. She was a pioneer in solid-state physics. She's also known as the Queen of Carbon. And she is the first female tenured, fully tenured professor at MIT. She was, and she came from the Bronx, from really, working class background, and made her way up. And during her education, she would walk around with Enrico Fermi doing the research and go on these walks. So it was very, it made a lot of sense that they called this walk the South Courtyard, the Improbability Walk, in her honor. Great achievements. And I remember during construction seeing her parking next to the trailers and walking in the building, and she worked there until probably her last days at 86. So very impressive for me being part of this. Strategically located gathering spaces like the moment invite occupants to take a moment to engage with colleagues or contemplative thought. Ecosystems. So MIT Nano, it fits within the campus's stormwater and landscape ecology master plan with targeted performance standards for MIT's urban context. So they have stormwater management, resilience planning, and heat island reduction goals are achieved through hardscape, landscape, and building materials. Like most of the MIT campus, MIT Nano is built on tidal land reclaimed from the Charles River estuary before 1916 when the main group was built. And therefore it retains some of the river's drainage patterns. So hardscape and vegetated areas were developed to encourage collecting, cleaning, and recharging rainwater into the ground and treating stormwater that leaves the site before it makes its way to the Charles River. As we showed in the video and talked about, the building revitalizes its urban campus ecosystem and transforms an industrial brownfield into a series of connected outdoor spaces that weave into that campus circulation fabric, both inside and outside. As part of the overall project of the North Corridor and the South Courtyard, all around the building, over 100 trees were planted, including native river birch, and is projected about 25,000 square feet of mature canopy will grow. Landscape filtration beds collect and clean more than 50,000 gallons of stormwater at the North Corridor alone. We used similar strategies, most the same strategies for the South Courtyard, the Improbability Walk. The project also meets MIT's urban heat island reduction goals with cool roofs and landscaping materials. So you see the prevalence of the lightly colored paving materials, which are also pervious. Light pollution is reduced with the dark sky compliant lighting design for the site and put on timers to go with astronomical time. And the cladding includes multi-layered etched glass to mitigate bird collision and was modeled for reflectivity and glare to ensure that no point on the adjacent buildings will encounter a glare value greater than direct sunlight. In order to transform the site from that paved back of house service type spaces with dumpsters, like vehicle oriented type space, into what it is now, and to build MIT Nano, a few buildings had to be demolished, the former building 12, and that was actually a hazardous material storage type building. So demolishing that was very involved because, of course, along with that kind of use came a contaminated building with hazardous materials, contamination under the building from leaks over the years, and contaminated soils around it. So a survey was done, and these kind of compounds were found, volatile organics and hydrocarbons and arsenic and lead in the soil, and they were at very high concentrations. So that had to be remediated, abated, all that soil had to be removed. This is an image from the demolition process, which comes kind of after the abatement. And you see this plan of what's under that slab of that building from the 40s. This piping had to be removed and cut the slab up in chunks and remove it. And one result of that was like 125 pounds of mercury was found in like the lab wastes, the traps under the slab, and these kind of things in that building. Looking at through the lens of water, you know, MIT's campus is surrounded by water. It's situated in an urban coastal area, obviously abutting the Charles River, also near the Atlantic coast, Boston Harbor beyond. And approximately 64% of MIT's 196-acre Cambridge campus is covered with impervious surfaces. So rain falling on these surfaces becomes stormwater runoff that flows into MIT and the city of Cambridge's drainage system, you know, which is all over 100 years old, parts of it, and eventually just does discharge into the Charles River. But changing weather patterns and an expected increase in stormwater require planning the built environment with the surrounding ecosystems in mind in order to create a resilient campus for the future. Like I mentioned before, like most of MIT campus, Nano is built on tidal land reclaimed from the Charles River estuary just over 100 years ago. So it retains some of those drainage patterns. And it's a very well-known in Boston image of time of settlement to now, the amount of infill, land making, reclaiming land from the river. So with the transformation of the site from a paved industrial brownfield into the series of previously paved and planted pedestrian outdoor spaces, those function to retain, treat, and infiltrate stormwater. And with that, the history of the site has reclaimed tidal land as kind of respected. Also at the building level, there was significant conservation efforts for water. So water is conserved with low flow rate and low flush fixtures, very typical, to ensure at least 40% potable water use reduction. And the site level irrigation water is completely provided from or mostly provided from the reverse osmosis reject reclaim system. I'd like to invite Jacob maybe to talk about broadening the, what do you call it, the scope a little bit, the lens.
Yeah, I mean, the lead
Systems
project boundary,
Yeah.
lead project boundary didn't, focus on this as much, but the biggest savings in water actually came from both the load reduction and the heat recovery chiller operation that reduced the demand on the central chiller plant. And that was the biggest savings in terms of water, because whenever you have cooling at a central water-cooled chiller plant, you're evaporating water in huge volumes on a building like this. So that was a large savings on an annual basis.
Yeah, so water is energy on many levels.
Yeah,
we saw that with this project, but we'll get into the energy savings soon. As far as the economic lens and the framework, so a shared core facility is driven by strong economic and academic factors. Nano research tools are multi-million-dollar investments that require really expensive high-performance space, which mitigate for vibration, electromagnetic interference or EMI, acoustics and controls of temperature and humidity to very stringent levels, like plus or minus 0.5 degrees Celsius and 5% relative humidity delta there. So locating such a facility accessibly to all at the heart of campus, it avoids the duplication of such investments across the campus while bringing multidisciplinary groups to collaborate. Some of these tools we see in this image here. This is the Nano scale imaging suite. It's in the deep basement that we created where the bunker was, the hazardous materials bunker was. So this is the right place for these instruments because it's the most environmentally quiet space on MIT's campus. It's an ultra stable basement level anchored by 5 million pounds of concrete, a mat slab, and it's optimized to meet the most stringent nanoscale imaging requirements for that low vibration and low EMI. And there's 12 of these such suites similar to this one, rated VCG and VCE in vibration talk. So these rooms are very, very quiet. And they have tools in there such as a scanning transmission electron microscope, or STEM. So you can make movies of atoms with that. And they have these TEMS, transmission electronic microscopes, capable of creating 3D representations of an enzyme. So it gets into biology too, less than 20 nanometers across.
And these instruments,
yeah.
These instruments are multi-million-dollar tools. Each. So, and the space, as Marcel was describing, so expensive. So the idea of having it all be in one place, governed differently than the rest of the campus and shared. So this tool that we're looking at actually is owned by the biology department and put here so it performs well and everybody can use it.
Yeah. Around the perimeter of these tools, we have this corridor on the left side, and that actually has skylights that go up to the south corridor to try to bring some connection to the outdoors and in a deep basement kind of setting when you're outside of these rooms, these black box type rooms. And I'll talk later in the resiliency, the design's about, the conflict of putting these tools in a basement and how that relates to the river next door and flooding, climate change and all that. So one of the challenges in the design of a cutting edge nanoscale research facility is anticipating programmatic change over the 50 to 100-year life of the building. So robust MEP systems include 12% additional capacity beyond the full built need. We have modular planning and generous floor-to-floor heights anticipate and facilitate fit-out change over time. I mean, in fact, the building is still being fit out. It's at least a 5-year process, and by the time you do that, it'll change over again. So the infrastructure is really in place to do that. And we made choices of durable materials like stone cladding and terrazzo floors. Those choices were based on life cycle cost benefits and reduced maintenance cost. And I'm going to hand it over to Jacob to talk about energy.
All right. So needless to say, energy is the 500-pound gorilla in terms of environmental impact on a building like this. This is just a graphic showing the life cycle impact categories for all different environmental impacts, not just greenhouse gases, but acidification, eutrophication, water use, fossil fuel depletion, and so forth, and how they might stack up in terms of a typical office building in the middle, right? Energy, transportation, two of the big drivers. But as you move to the right and you scale up to the huge energy demands for a clean room like this, you can see energy consumption starts to really dwarf everything else in terms of environmental impact across many of these different categories. So we knew we had to focus on that.
Jacob, it's good to explain why, because of cleaning a clean room environment is all about circulating air so many times over an hour. So it's just like pushing so much air, and there's so much fan.
Yeah, we mentioned in the video, maybe 260 is the limit that it can provide. You know, like a lab, you'd like to do them at 6 or less. You know, we keep trying to push it as low as we can, but you run into safety concerns. But so this is at a completely different scale.
Yeah, great point. Yeah. So to address that, we basically took a shotgun approach and tried to determine all the possible energy strategies that could reduce carbon and energy consumption. So this graphic just represents some of those strategies that we investigated. Each of those circles is one strategy. You can see they have different categories. Some are addressing exhaust, some are dealing with cooling, some heating, and they're graphed in terms of their carbon reduction. The biggest circles have the biggest carbon savings potential if we implement them. And they're also, as you move to the right, they get more expensive. And as you move up, they have more cost savings. So as you, basically, if you're like a clock and you're going clockwise, you're getting a longer and longer payback timeline. So this is a way to kind of say, look, there's a million strategies out there. We've looked at all of them. What are the ones that we're going to pursue that have the biggest impact and have the most cost-effective outcome? So that was one piece of our approach. The other piece of our approach was to say, all right, well, what are all the other clean rooms doing around the country? Let's go and talk to all of these other universities and understand how do their clean rooms are designed and operated, and how are they performing in terms of a number of key metrics. So you can see on the next slide, there's this same set of different universities. We looked at how much clean room they have under filter for different clean room classes. So the cleaner the clean room, the lower the number in terms of clean room class. And the workhorse of typical academic clean rooms is the class 100 space. That's the kind of key space you use to do the majority of the research. And you can see MIT Nano, the second one, has the largest amount of class 100 clean room space. And that was just, that was just the starting point of the metrics, but we looked at a whole variety of metrics. On the next slide, you can see the tool load, so how much equipment is in the space, what is the recirculation air change rate, and the efficiency with which that air is moved, how much makeup air change is required, and what's the supply air temperature and dew point in the space. And then we graphed all of the data from all those different examples, including some LBNL studies that were done too, to look at, for example, on the screen here, you can see the tool load. You know, some of these are measured, some are design values, but you know, typical labs, you might think of, oh, 3, 5, 8 watts a square foot. Well, these are, you know, 10, 20, 80 watts a square foot potentially, at least from a design perspective, for how much equipment can be in that space. But what was interesting is, you know, you actually go in there and you put some meters on these systems and you realize, you know, there's me hugging the Star furnace, right, which has a huge power demand, but it has a chill water cooling coil in it. And so a lot of that heat doesn't end up actually going into the space. So we wanted to really understand how much cooling do you really need to right size and have this very flexible solution that's also very efficient. So all that benchmarking data drove us to, you know, identify the most efficient solutions. One of the big aha moments that came out of that was, well, what are the strategies that can have that from all of this benchmarking that we see that have not only the biggest impact in terms of carbon and energy reduction, but also at the same time are unusual in clean rooms. So one of the, like, just as an example, a typical lab building, of course, you're going to do variable volume. Why would you have a lab running constant volume all the time? If you're shutting the sashes on fume hoods, you want the airflow to turn down, or when people aren't in the space, you want it to turn down. But clean rooms have such hazardous chemicals in them and have such critical environmental controls that in a lot of cases, historically, clean rooms were not variable volume. They were just constant volume. So that's just one example of this list where they didn't have heat recovery because there were extremely corrosive materials in the exhaust. They didn't have variable volume airflow. They had huge pressure drops pushing that tremendous amount of air through just a certain percent of the ceiling being covered with filters in the clean room. So there's all these missed opportunities in the sort of business as usual practice for clean rooms. And what we wanted to do is flip that on its head. And of course, you know, some of these institutions only had, you know, 1 or 2 of these strategies. Some had none, some maybe had 3 or 4 at most, but MIT said, we want to do the most. So they implemented 6 out of the 8, what we call the above and beyond major strategies. So that included, you know, exhaust heat recovery, variable volume exhaust, variable volume air change rate in the clean room, looking at particle counters and occupancy sensors, as well as 100% filter coverage on the ceilings of the clean room space, so that all that air that has to flow through can flow through as smoothly and easily as possible and use the least amount of fan energy. Another interesting thing that that was really innovative on this is we actually put reheat at the little recirc units that blow air through the clean room. And the big advantage of that is then you don't have to reheat all the air at the big central air handler, which wastes a huge amount of energy. You can actually keep that nice cool air that you've dehumidified and then tune at every zone where you need that additional reheat. So overall, that achieved over 50% reduction in energy costs compared to the baseline case. So we achieved all of the points for LEED in terms of the optimized energy category. And on the next slide, you can see we've been tracking the energy performance. And part of that is not just understanding how it's performing, but understanding how much the fit out has occurred, right? How intensely is it being used to date? Because it takes years and millions of dollars of investment to even fit out all of the lab equipment and tools that go into this space. And so you can see on that last slide, you know, what percentage of each floor of clean room and laboratory space has been fit out. And overall, you can see on the right-hand side here, we have the modeled energy consumption, and then we have the measured consumption for 2019 and 2020. And the fact that it's about half of what we modeled is not because our model was inaccurate. It's actually an illustration of the success of the design to be flexible and to vary as, you know, we know that the building is operating at a lower intensity in terms of the tool load and occupancy, while the building is responding to that and using less in accordance with that.
Yeah, so this being able to present the, you know, measured energy performance versus the modeled was a really big thing in our award submission. For you're pretty much really required to do that nowadays for a COTE award, and thank goodness we were able to share the information with MIT and digest it and show that turn down. So we could, we had this mission, this charge to deliver the most energy efficient clean room, and so far it looks okay.
Yeah, thanks. It's doing great.
Yeah. Thank you. And for the well-being category, as we talked about in the video too, the highest priority for any research environment is to comply with the best practices for health and safety. So beyond avoiding harm, MIT Nano has been designed to foster occupant well-being from multiple perspectives, including thermal, visual, oral, so acoustics, physical, and psychological. Safety of all users, especially within the hazardous environment of a clean room, is ensured with a toxic gas monitoring system, TGMS, one of the many acronyms you learn doing this, and increased visibility. So it's a real architectural thing, transparency, with windows surrounding the clean room. Also bring daylighting deep into the lab while providing views out to the landscape, really most importantly. So from the inside, researchers, they experience more sunshine and more of the world they're working to benefit. And even within the tight site constraints, connection to the outdoors is supported through access to and views into the courtyard. As we mentioned, the glare and reflectivity studies were conducted to make sure that no point in the vicinity receives glare value exceeding direct sunlight. As you notice, we have an all-glass, so-called all-glass building on the outside. So it'd be nice to our neighbors. And as far as getting fresh air into the building, that outdoor air, we did a wind wake analysis, and that was used to inform the location of the fresh air intakes. And it's actually kind of counterintuitive site like this, but we run into this a lot in these urban university contexts. The air actually comes in lower to the ground to avoid entrainment of hazardous exhausts from the roofs around the building. His roofs is a sea of exhaust fans and all these buildings around us. Yeah.
I wanted to add an important part of our kind of design approach to this building, which is illustrated in these images, which is kind of putting the engine on display. I mean, this is
the machine on display.
Yeah. Exactly. I tell the story of how I was so impressed once when I saw a Ferrari car in Italy with the glass over the engine, and I was like,
the rear engine.
God, like, you have to have you have to have such confidence in that the engine is so beautiful.
Beautiful, yeah.
So a lot of care and modeling of all conduits down to the 1/4-inch pipes was done to keep it in, I guess, presentable and worthy of display and the building. Thanks.
Yeah. So as a lead type building, we did specify low VOC materials across all the categories, so we don't limit our compromising human health, and we earned all those credits. And as far as the planning, as we talked about before, physical activities encouraged through open stairs, direct connection to courts, bicycle racks, and showers and changing, those typical things. It's really used on campus though. And for the acoustics, oral comfort, we addressed that through appropriate measures to minimize HVAC noise. So we have low pressure drop, which also helps with energy, sound attenuators, and vibration isolation, which supports the work they're doing too, has multiple benefits. And one of the kind of metaphors of the architectural metaphors, the building, which also goes into well-being, is this inside out design. So on the image on the left, you have the infinite corridor, as you know it from 1916, double loaded kind of corridor, but a very interesting space. And then MIT Nano, you're going around the perimeter of the clean room. So the infinite corridor is kind of opened up and connected to the exterior of the courtyard. So all that together supports well-being, the technical, the clean rooms, the spaces for relief on campus, which are in such short supply, the lounges and booths that we have, and then in the kind of obvious, very common on campus now, the video conferencing systems, so that you can have a conference and have attendees from all over the world. As far as resources, you can imagine nanoscale research buildings They're typically constructed with cast and placed reinforced concrete waffle slab structures. That's to create the stiffness and isolation from adjacent ambient noise and vibration. But in this building, we shifted from a concrete structure to a steel primary frame once it comes out of the ground. It's obviously composite concrete on metal floor and roof decks, but it does significantly reduce the material tonnage. It saved over $5 million in construction costs and reduced the schedule. And that reduces the embodied carbon. That structural move alone is like a 29% reduction. Other material choices focused on high durability and longevity to conserve resources over the life of the building. And these included stone cladding for the exterior and interior surfaces. It also fits into the context very well of the limestone. And fiber cement boards and terrazzo floors, which you'll find all over the Infinite Corridor, in all the old and new buildings. The building also used 100% FSC certified lumber, and we used lower embodied carbon insulation like mineral wool instead of plastic foams. Most of the exterior cladding is built as a thermally broken rain screen construction. So in addition to the energy benefits of thermally broken with like Cascadia clips, point supports, that allows you to replace individual units if necessary, if they're broken stone or a broken glazing unit. It's also a unitized curtain wall system, which helped with the speed of erection and kind of kit of parts, taking it apart again. So we were able to have 15% regional materials and about almost the same percentage of recycled material content in the project. And there was a very strong effort on construction waste management with the plan with high exemplary performance goals. Over 90% were achieved. It was helped by the demolition waste, obviously, that I showed you earlier. And one of our last categories is change. So I'm going to turn it over.
Yeah,
Smear a
I
little
just
bit.
want to, I would do a time check, Lara and Beth.
6:55.
We're 6:55, and we don't want to keep people longer. Everybody has.
Well, we have till 7:30, but we usually try to do an hour and then have questions. So
so we still have 5 minutes. All right, we'll go quickly through this. So that notion of change, as you heard already, for the science and the use, one of the big thing that is challenging to design for is that you don't know what scientists you're going to hire to do part of this kind of nano research, and what tools are they going to need. So the idea that you need to be flexible, you have to provide for things that you just don't know today, drove some decisions, primarily kind of robust systems that are capable of adjusting, as you've heard. And for example, they're using a lot of hazardous chemicals, and the code prevents you from having those on upper levels. So what we use is H5 occupancies, which has certain requirements of air changes and rating, etc. So we provided that for what was called the nano makerspace on the top floor, as well as planning on a module so that you can flip things in the future and will still fit, and then generous floor-to-floor heights. So these strategies are what we use to kind of anticipate unknown research that might come through the life of the building. But additional to that, Marcel will walk us through some of the kind of change anticipated from in terms of resiliency and climate change.
Yeah, as you may have noticed, we kind of touched on those in the water categories and ecosystem categories. That you kind of get a hint that the campus, MIT campus, is exposed to what we call propagation flooding. That's flooding risk caused by the raised level of the Charles River from sea level rise and like a storm surge event. And so there were a lot of mitigation measures actually integrated into the building design and construction, and then also at the site level. So I'm going to talk about both those scopes and talking about planning for resiliency. So at HGA, this is like a diagram we like to illustrate the reiterative process of resiliency planning, where you forecast risks, you assess the risks, and then you plan and implement resilient strategies. So we kind of saw that happen live during this project. Project changed, and so kind of the world changed in the 10 years it took to design and construct it. You know, in October 2012, there was a confluence of a nor'easter and Hurricane Sandy, and it created a superstorm that was like, it was huge, over 1,000 miles wide. I can't believe it's almost 10 years ago, but you know, our New York and New Jersey neighbors to the south, they really faced the full brunt of this superstorm. With New York City, they were kind of caught unprepared, their pants down a little bit, facing a storm surge resulting in a high tide that was 9 feet higher than normal. As a result, parts of the subway system flooded, electrical distribution infrastructure shorted out, and it plunged much of lower Manhattan into the dark ages for a few days there, or weeks. There was a lot of damage, $70 billion. So it was like second to Hurricane Katrina, you know, a previous event. And a lot's happened since then, you know, continuing those kind of episodic events from just leftovers of hurricanes this fall and this late summer. So, you know, here in Boston, we missed Sandy's damaging storm surge by 5 hours because it came at low tide for us. There has been an increase in hurricane frequency and intensity leading up to Katrina and Sandy, because we've had 2 500-year storms in 15 years. And we know that sea levels are rising. In Boston, the sea level is already a foot higher than 100 years ago. And, you know, some of these projections that were shared with us, it could be another 7.5 feet higher in the next 100 years. So this will only make the next storm surge so much worse. So Sandy was our wake-up call to get ready for the next storm, because it is coming. It's just a matter of time. I just even saw a chronicle about that a few days ago. That it's just, when the Charles River Water Association talk about that, it's like we just keep missing it, and it's going to happen sometime. We're going to run out of luck soon. So like these recent events, like Superstorm Sandy, they cause us to rethink the relationship between the campus, the Charles River, and Boston Harbor beyond. Not only for the MIT project, but I would say all development in the city of Boston, Cambridge, and beyond. So our setting, it's such a great resource in many ways, but it's a real threat to urban campus development, business as usual practices. With that context, the city of Boston and Cambridge and MIT have been doing the work to prepare, including integrated campus and city of Cambridge flood risk modeling, which actually was done by Kleinfelder, who was on our team as a civil engineer for this. They did that with the city and MIT. So the map represented on the left shows that a significant portion of the MIT campus is or will be exposed to flooding risks, particularly the buildings adjacent to Vassar, Albany, and Main Street. So kind of surrounding, some of those streets surrounding the site. So one reason for this flood exposure is historic, as this part of the campus was primarily built on land reclaimed from the original Charles River Basin and the estuary, and it will likely still retains those estuarine drainage and flow characteristics. You can see the MIT site in the red. So MIT area of campus stormwater eventually drains to the Charles River via the Killian Court outfall. You can see that in this diagram of the collection area for the North Corridor. And the capacity of this pipe, it's likely to be exceeded in 2070 during a 100-year storm event. So that's coming up quick. So what are you going to do to address it? As a result of these existing constraints and projections, MIT developed these campus flooding risk scenarios, and those include storm surge plus a sea level rise together, probably after 2015, a hurricane or nor'easter that blows a surge of water from the ocean into Boston Harbor and around or over the top of the Charles River Dam. That's kind of like a worst case scenario. Or there could be an upriver rain event upstream in the Charles River watershed, up to 3 days of rain. I feel like we've had those recently. A day of rain, 24-hour rain event over Cambridge, likely covering the entire region of the campus. And then we have these flash floods. It's a 1 to 3 hour intense rain event covering a portion of campus. Those are happening more frequently too. So we can use green infrastructure to address these aging utility challenges. Business as usual is that stormwater runs off paved and compacted unpaved surfaces, discharging untreated stormwater runoff to the Charles River. Using green infrastructure instead, stormwater from paved and compacted surfaces is absorbed and cleansed by landscape and soils, relieving reliance on the aging infrastructure below. Some of that was implemented in the North Corridor resilient landscape. So it's an example of using that green infrastructure to address the aging utility concerns. So here's some photos from the construction phase in the North Corridor, right outside of MIT Nano. You can see when you dig up, there's so much existing infrastructure there that you're really hemmed in on the amount of storage you can create in the ground and structures you can place. But they did manage to do as well as they could and put those structures below what you see from the air when you walk there, the resilient landscape in the after position. You could see the many areas of tree planters, the pervious light colored pavement, and the drainage channel, linear drainage channel there. And remember that before that was all just like impervious pavement, like no trees. So this project, it really greens what was a highly impervious utility service drive. It's transforming it into the inviting, accessible, pedestrian-friendly campus corridor with enhanced safety and comfort, and tries to address those storm events and concerns on site. Now, at the building level, strategic planning and mitigation, I'll discuss some of the strategic resilience planning and mitigation effort that went into the project. One of them was disaster response planning. So fire department access is provided through the Northwest Passage breezeway, which also has the art in it above you, and into the Improbability Walk landscape south courtyard from the North Quarter, with a fire command center at the main entrance. And there's a remote tactical response center for the toxic gas monitoring system in the adjacent building 13. For the foundation system of the building, water resistant, this image in the middle, it's taken from the construction of the foundation in the basement. So you can see the slurry wall system that was used to make that deep basement to hold back the surrounding buildings, and that then became the foundation. And we used like a blindside waterproofing membrane under that thick matte slab of concrete that's under those imaging suites I showed you before that. So that system, it's also part of the specific flood hazard mitigation strategies. There was other strategies implemented. We took the ground floor level of MIT Nano and we raised it about 6 inches above the floor level, the ground floor level of the surrounding buildings. So it buys you a little bit of extra time. And in that basement, we do have a pumped drainage system to relieve the hydrostatic pressure, and that is on backup, like almost everything. Which I'll talk about a little bit more. And the MEP system resilience, we have emergency generator, and we have 2 sources of steam and chilled water and 2 sources of nitrogen to keep the clean room processes running. There's even more. In fact, pretty much everything to do with this building is backed up. It's more like a redundant design than a resilient design in that aspect. We even have 2 sources for fire protection water from MIT, local, and the city of Cambridge. 3 sources of electricity, the central utility plant that Jacob talked a little bit about. We have Eversource grid and the emergency generator, 2 sources of steam, and the 2 sources of nitrogen. And in the footprint of the building, we had to move a lot of these existing utilities out of the way actually as part of the enabling project. So like I mentioned, during design, Superstorm Sandy happened. And in Manhattan, you might have heard the basements of multiple hospitals flooded, including NYU Langone Medical Center, Bellevue Hospital, and the VA Hospital. So the risk scenario where the MIT Nano deep basement could be flooded from the surrounding building basements, which are built lower than the main group building, that was evaluated. And after that, MIT decided to move the 208 and 480 volt electrical substations. They moved them out of the basement, which was standard practice entirely. But moving electrical infrastructure, transformers and things like that out of the basement is not so easy, because you actually have to take then a electrical duct bank that usually lives, in the ground just below the surface, and move it up the side of the building. So you could see that in the pictures of the center on the right. So you had to put it up on fire rated, like a 2 or 3 or maybe 4 hour precast concrete chase up the side of the building and into those spaces at level 5 and 6, way up in the air. So while the air handling units and the emergency generator were already located in the rooftop penthouse, the fuel oil storage for that generator still is located in the basement. So what we did in there was we took the fuel oil pump from that tank and we did elevate that 6 feet in the basement. So that would buy you some time in a catastrophic flood event. That kind of wraps it up for the implemented resilient design measures. Hand it over to Arlen.
So the last category, discovery. Discovery is really about how we extend the building now to the wider community. It's related to taking the lessons, the performance data, and experiences of the building and applying them to the future. We've been fortunate to have gotten a lot of recognition for the building. The next slide shows on the right-hand side the awards that have been given to the building in the last 2 or 3 years. And then on the left-hand side, we've also presented at a number of conferences. So there have been very different multiple venues where we've brought the information of the building and discussed it in various ways, including forums at MIT itself. The building itself has its own website and they advertise events there. So it is now an entity in and of itself. The other aspect is that when you share information, you're looking back at the kind of lessons that the building can offer. And so we have done post-occupancy evaluation on the building. We're continuing to do so. We've done it on some of the limited spaces in the building, but not the entire building. Some of what you've heard before from Marcel and Jacob is that the building continues to be occupied. So it really is a story that's still in process. It's a work in progress. The building will continue to be occupied by more and more researchers. We're collecting energy data. MIT has committed to tracking their energy usage of the building. And Jacob showed you some of the graphs that related to this. But, in the end, it really is something that is the beginning of a story for the building, not the end of it. And with that, I think we'll just turn it over and Samir, you can wrap it up.
Yeah, this is our presentation. I realize this is a building type that is not common for everybody, so please ask any questions about that part and anything else that you've heard. Thank you.
If anyone would like to unmute themselves and ask direct questions, feel free, or if you'd like to put it in the chat, and we can, I'm sure they would be happy to address that in either way. I can kick off. I really appreciate your presentation. It was great to hear, and thank you for going through the framework so diligently. It's great to see someone follow through with it. I know it's something that we all look at in design, but to hear it go through step by step, I think from my side, I'm wondering, are there any, not knowing as you've gone through this process, are you Are there things you've learned from that framework that you're taking forward or informing the design as you go? Or are there more difficult portions of it to meet, especially in such a, a building of this type? Or just some lessons learned there, if you have any you'd share.
Yeah. So the framework specifically, as Arlen was saying, we adopted it as a firm-wide way to look at all projects. Some, depending on the client, depending on the types of building type, you can kind of achieve above and beyond and, hit all of the framework guidelines. But in this specific case, it was such a unique building type to kind of really achieve these goals with that it was, as you saw, like the benchmarking that we had to do just took us a huge amount of work. So it is partly because MIT is MIT and they wanted us to do the type of serious academic work that they expect of themselves. So they didn't just want what was done on the previous project as a formula for what applies here. They wanted to see proof. They wanted to see data from other places. So we had to work harder on all fronts, but specifically energy, as you heard. But definitely the framework for us is now the Bible. So we fully converted. We believe in it. We think it's terrific lens to look at all projects. And so it's a great comment towards the COTE and the AIA from our point of view.
I would add that some of the criteria, some of the metrics on some of those categories are very quantitative, and they come about through naturally EUI calculations, lighting power density, that sort of thing. Other categories, integration, change, discovery, they're a little looser in terms of how you define them and what the actual metric is for a building. But overall, I think, again, just to reinforce what we're saying is that it has been a good way to really kind of wrap our minds around what is this building all about. And it really does give a lot of structure to defining that.
Great. I think that leads me to another question of, and then maybe, you can't say, but or you don't have the information, is the numbers that you're receiving, is that, these COVID numbers, is the building fully occupied? Is that, with your energy being so much lower than you had modeled, or do you have other ideas of why that it could be reaching such a great benchmark?
Marcel, you can answer that.
Yeah, that is a great question, and that was actually specifically asked in gathering the data in the application for the award. Was, is there a COVID impact on the measured performance if you have it? So we actually got the building was opened officially in October 2018. So we were able to get measured data from a little bit before that, all the way until, through 2020. So we looked at that data and then we took actually the COVID data out. So we were able to have a year before COVID. So we took right up to COVID and looked at that, the measured energy performance during that time period. And, the building it's pretty well, it's still on the path to being fully fit out, but it's well along the way in its path. So I don't think the data was real junk in that respect. What maybe Jacob could say more about it, what it does show about the ability of the building to throttle down, which was a design intent, real design intent.
Yeah, exactly. And part of what we're digging into now is exactly what's driving all that savings, to understand how much is it the reduced loads in the space, like equipment loads, and versus just the system's ability to turn down to lower makeup air change rates or lower air change rates because the space is very clean and there's not a lot of particles being generated. So we're working on figuring out exactly what's causing the savings, and then that'll allow us to understand how it might change in the future as it gets more heavily occupied.
We know that the campus at MIT was closed for a good chunk of last 18 months. So I'm pretty sure it slowed down their fit out. So although we have data on the performance before, I think getting to the final kind of what the real load and performance is delayed by a year at least.
Thank you, that's helpful. Anyone, I don't want to keep monopolizing this. If anyone else would like to ask questions, please feel free.
And feel free to put your questions in the chat. And I'm just going to say, to remind everyone that the link for AIC credits is in the chat, so don't forget to fill that out.
So Jacob, you did mention that there, the other campuses have implemented certain aspects of, I think you had 8 points for how to, these very clean, or high performing labs could save energy, but this seems to be one of the first to really pull them together. Thinking through, like you mentioned, even highly corrosive exhaust materials and reasons why maybe other people aren't doing it. How do you work around that? Like, how do you achieve maybe some of those? Or
yeah, so we used specialty coatings on the lab air valves that are in corrosive and hazardous exhausts, so that they don't basically just corrode out and rust out too quickly. So it's I forget the acronym, but it's basically like a Kynar coating, like you'd see on like a very high-end metal roof that can withstand, sea salt air for decades. It's that type of a coating on the exhaust valves. We also looked at the coils in the exhaust unit at the old MIT cleanroom facility, and they had not corroded. And so that gave us confidence that we would not destroy our coils in the exhaust airstream using the heat recovery system. So those are a couple of ways that we made sure that this would actually work and not just be taking a risk blindly.
makes sense. Beth, do you have anything? Again, I feel like I'm asking all the questions.
No, I feel like I kept trying to think of questions and you guys kept answering them.
We did a great job presenting.
You did.
I will say that the anecdote about the Queen of Carbon is like my new favorite anecdote of all time.
Yeah,
I will be using it.
Yeah, you should really look her up, and there's some great videos of her. And Millie was actually even in a GE commercial like a few years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I mean, I got kind of choked up talking about her, actually, thinking back on, seeing her so many times when I was at the construction trailer early in the morning, and maybe her husband would, or like someone would show up and drop her off, and she'd walk into Infinite Corridor from there. So yeah, but it's really inspiring figure in our office, like for women in STEM. We talk about that a lot. We do S&T in Boston. So we have all these, it's really great to see all these women leading in our office, rising up, and how it's been changing in the last year.
We have a question in the chat from Eric. He says, do you expect that the stormwater management strategies employed here will be carried out across campus?
Yes, they, so MIT is doing more and more of this, I feel. And this project kind of, from its inception into design and construction, it got more and more rigorously implemented. So, you know, first we did it in the scope of the Improbability Walk at a little bit limited measure, and then that expanded. The North Corridor was designed a little bit later and built at the tail end of the project, but phased so that all kind of came together. And they really did push forward with trying to implement those strategies to infiltrate, to store, you know, recharge, infiltrate the water on site instead of just putting it into the hard pipes right away and dumping it into the river. Because that's really like, it's an effective, blue infrastructure, green infrastructures are effective ways to kind of stretch what we have. It's like you put less pressure on it and you could keep developing around it and, you know, just buy us some more time.
Their sustainability group, led by Julie Newman, was just being formed or just formed at the beginning of the design for MIT Nano. They really have been empowered, and I think they're the stewards for doing everything that you heard about. So they will definitely be guiding future developments in the same spirit.
Yeah, that was also a really fascinating thing about doing this award submission. You know, like when we said, when we started the project, there wasn't this AIA framework in this sense. So we just had, you know, we had LEED for this project. That's not a framework. It's a building rating system, but we had a mission, you know, LEED Platinum and most energy efficient clean room. But then looking back on it and all the things that were done through the lens of the framework was really enlightening. And having had the LEED, all this LEED documentation to Platinum on hand, having familiarity with it in our team, like Jacob and I, doing that painful LEED at the end kind of documentation, having that really helped us be able to complete the super spreadsheet that the AIA COTE uses for the award. It was really interesting. And it also gives you a great opportunity to reach back out to the team you worked with and to the client to get missing pieces of information, get updates on what's going on, and put it into a broader context. So I learned a lot doing that will, you know, the HGA has adopted, and I think many firms are adopting as a framework for design excellence.
I mean, this has been great. I thank you all for your time, and you know, thanks to everyone for coming. As we have said, that you know, we really appreciate your being here, and you know, thanks for staying and answering questions for us all. If you know, this has been recorded, so it will be put up on the AIA's website and the BSA's website as we do later on. So everyone will be open for other people if they weren't able to attend. And yeah, thank you to everyone. Thanks for
having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Good evening,
Good night,
everyone.
Take care. Good night.
Night.